Welcome to Denver Startup Week. I'm Tammy Dorr, President and CEO of the Downtown Denver Partnership and co-chair of Denver Startup Week. This year marks the 10-year anniversary of Denver Startup Week. DSW has been the catalyst for lots of change over the past decade. And this week, we're coming together to celebrate the past and dream big for the future. We are able to bring Denver Startup Week to this community thanks to our 2021 sponsors. Thank you to our HQ and title sponsor, Amazon, and our title sponsors whose leadership makes this week come to life. Capital One Cafe, Downtown Denver Partnership, Fluid Truck, Hotel Engine, and WeWork. And our track sponsors who have made all of the great content you're hearing today possible, our founder track sponsor, Kickstart, growth track sponsor, Friday Health Plans, developer track sponsor, Quizlet, product track sponsor, Palantir, our designer track sponsor, Battery 621, and the Public Works, people track sponsor, Exactly, and spotlight event sponsor, Strat Labs. Our headline event sponsors are bringing the excitement to the week. Thank you to B-Side Fund, Colorado Public Radio, Comcast, Coors Brewing, Denver Pavilions, Entrepreneurship at the University of Denver, JP Morgan Chase, Method, Moss Adams, Pi Insurance, Promontory Mortgage, Path, Southwest, Tattered Cover, and VF Venture Foundry. Finally, thank you to our partner and member sponsors, all listed on the screen. Please say thank you to these companies as you enjoy our hybrid Denver Startup Week. And don't forget, use the hashtag DenStartupWeek to share your experiences and moments of inspiration on social media. Have a great week.
The Public Works is a Denver, Colorado-based design, fabrication, and multimedia marketing firm that allows your company to craft an authentic presence to your target audience. For the past 15 years, the Public Works media team has been telling stories with words, pictures, and films. Our unique approach to brand storytelling allows us to get strong reactions and results from our content. We work in experienced and nimble teams with our crew of producers, directors, and cinematographers that all have first-hand experience and international presence. We are fortunate to have amazing clients that allow us to get wherever we need to go with the right tools for the highest production value. Lots of people can take a pretty picture. Just look at Instagram. While we believe our images speak for themselves, what really sets us apart is our decades of experience, our network, and our ability to make shit happen when it counts. We love bringing unexpected partners together to create added value for everyone, and most of all, we love when we finish a job confident that we've not only executed, but elevated the end product, and we know that everyone involved enjoyed the process. Our company was founded on the idea that life is about learning and teaching through every experience. We apply a strict discipline of work hard, play hard, and make great fucking work. We amplify awesome. We surround ourselves with the best and feed off of infectious innovation, ideas, collaboration, and building long-term friendships and partnerships. Contact us anytime for a meeting at our office, golf course, or on the chairlift.
Hi everyone, welcome to Denver Startup Week. I'm Castle, the Designer Track Chair and member of Denver Startup Week Organizing Committee. Before we get started, the Denver Startup Week Organizing Committee acknowledges Indigenous people as the original owners of the land on which we reside, which is the traditional territory of the Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho peoples. We acknowledge the painful history of genocide, ethnic cleansing, stolen land, forced removal, and forced occupation of their territory. And we honor those who have stewarded this land throughout generations and all other Indigenous tribes and nations who call Colorado home. Thank you for joining us in the 10th anniversary of Denver Startup Week. At Denver Startup Week, we strive to make all of our sessions a space where attendees can connect, learn, and grow regardless of age, gender identity, gender expression, race, ability, sexual orientation, or the combination of those identities. There's something for everyone at DSW, thanks to all of our community members who submitted their best content to make the week what it is. And thank you for joining us. Thank you to our sponsors for their support in helping us keep DSW free and accessible to all, especially our designer track sponsor, Battery 621, and the Public Works. With that, please enjoy the session and the entire week.
Take it away, Morgan.
Castle, did you want to say anything?
I was going to chime in. Am I on the video though?
Yes, you're ready to go.
Oh, you can see me? Okay. Hey, this is Castle, Design Track Chair. Welcome to the last session of Denver Startup Week 2021. If you missed anything, everything's going to be on our YouTube channel a few days after it goes live. So check it out next week. Want to thank Morgan with the Denver Metro Small Business Development Group. Sorry guys, trying to read off notes. Thank you for bringing this topic. It's really important and we're excited to see what you guys have to say. Also wanted to announce the physical product showcase happening right after this session at the Downtown Denver Startup Week headquarters, presented by Amazon. And that's a physical product showcase. We have 40 vendors down there. You can learn about their products, see all of these local Colorado brands, followed by a happy hour from 3 to 5. So that's kind of our last hurrah of Denver Startup Week. I'm gonna get off here. Thanks, Morgan. Take it away.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for being here today. I'm hoping everyone's having a great Denver Startup Week and you've had a great week overall. My name is Morgan Alo. I'm the Programs and Communications Manager at the Denver Metro Small Business Development Center, and I'll be moderating today. I just want to go over a couple Zoom reminders. Participants are unable to unmute themselves or turn on their video. All questions to the panel, just put it in the Q&A chat box or the chat. I'll be looking at both of those, so I'll be sure to get your question to the panel. If you have any questions about anything else, feel free to shoot me a private message. And let's keep questions and comments constructive and fun. Otherwise, I'd love to introduce today's panelists. We have Quinn, who's the Executive Director of the Signal Tech Coalition. We have Jordan, the Lead Energy, Water, Land Analyst for Nrel. Julie Smith, the Sustainability Engineer at Miller-Coors. And Devon, who is the Director of the Water Connection, Greenway Foundation, and then a tap-in administrator. Guys, you want to take your, put your videos on and we'll go ahead and get started here. So first question I'm going to ask everybody is, will you just introduce yourself and tell us what brought you into this space? And we can start with Quinn.
Great. Thanks so much for having me here today. Really excited to be here. Quinn Antus, Executive Director of Signal Tech Coalition. A quick bit about Signal. Our focus is on making advocacy around climate action really accessible and seamless for tech leaders throughout Colorado. Tech comprises 14% of the state's economy and employs over 11% of our workforce. And so tech is an economic powerhouse and has a lot of really significant ground to advocate for climate action. Our focus is on kind of demystifying that process and making it really easy, because advocacy is oftentimes really confusing. And so I'm excited to be here today to talk more about what we do and talk more about what are the opportunities within the climate sector.
Perfect. Jordan, how about you?
My name is Jordan Macknick. I'm from the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, or Nrel, out in Golden. So I've been with the lab about 12 years now, looking at the intersection between energy issues and water issues. And in the past, we've looked at a lot of how much water is the energy sector using, but more and more, we are seeing that there's a lot more desire for alternative water technologies to meet with to address water scarcity, whether that's desalination or water reuse or additional stringent water treatment requirements. Each of those areas requires an additional amount of energy, and we're seeing things like, desalination can be 10 times require 10 times the energy as your traditional water treatment. So this becomes a very clear area where new technology advancements and more smartly designed systems could really, pave the way and make more adoption of advanced water treatment or desalination technologies feasible. And that's sort of my area of interest and the area that I'm happy to chat more about today.
Great. Julie?
So I'm Julie Smith, and actually I am a former sustainability engineer at Miller-Coors Brewery. I took a retirement package 2 years ago, and I've been very involved in energy and water my entire career as an engineer. Started out, actually, the first half was in the oil industry, and about halfway through my career, I just couldn't stand it anymore. And I had to get out of that. I couldn't support our addiction the rest of my life and feel good about myself. So I found the job at Coors. I thought beer would be pretty benign and got very involved in their sustainability. And my job was to find ways to reduce energy, reduce water, reduce waste at the brewery. And we got our energy down to less than 50% while I was there. I was there for 19 years, and about 9 of it was actually in the sustainability position. But less than 50% per barrel of beer on the energy, and down close to 30% reduction on water. And then we got to be the largest zero waste brewery in the world. So really made some nice changes there. It's a good company. And when I left a couple of years ago, I started a personal care products company to make sustainable products that can be refilled in the same containers and that don't contain the poisons and toxins that we don't want in our wastewater streams, that make their way into the environment, that make treating wastewater difficult, that make it harder on our wildlife and fish that we are losing. So I've dedicated the rest of my life to that. And you see RMWA on my logo because I'm a past president of the Rocky Mountain Water Environment Association. And that was part of my wastewater involvement at Coors. So been very involved in water my entire career in one way or the other.
Great. Thanks, Julie. Devon, will you introduce yourself? And then after you tell us why you got in this space, will you tell us a little bit more about the water connection and tap in and the best way for people to engage with your organization?
Yeah, of course. So thank you so much. Glad to be here. Devon Buckels, Director of the Water Connection, which is the policy and water resources arm of the Greenway Foundation. My background is urban and regional planning, so I've taken sort of a circuitous route to working in water, but it is connected nonetheless. So I've worked in public, private, and nonprofit sectors. And now in this role as with the Water Connection, part of what we do is work hard to engage the entrepreneurial and business community in helping solve the water resource challenges. And so the name Tap In is applied to the part of our work that speaks with the business and entrepreneurial community. So I'm sure all of you know that in Colorado, we are facing some pretty significant water resource challenges. And so there's an increased demand for innovation in this space. And part of what Tap In wants to do is we sometimes hold reverse pitch events, which really puts the end users or potential customers and clients in front of the business community to help dial in market opportunities so that those businesses and entrepreneurs become more and more familiar with exactly what the water sector and the end users really need to make those businesses more successful. And we would love to engage with entrepreneurs and startups as we go forward here in helping to solve these challenges and help make those connections between the end users and the businesses. So I'm really here to do more listening than talking today. I'm not an expert, a technical expert, so I'm going to be listening to the panelists and all of you in the audience to help us understand how we can help bridge those gaps and support you in doing what you do. So glad to be here. Thank you.
Thanks so much. That kind of reminded me too, Quinn and Jordan, would you guys talk about how people can get involved with you, especially entrepreneurs? They're looking for new opportunities, those sort of things, or they're looking to engage with your expertise. What's the best way for them to go about that?
Absolutely, great question. We would love people to engage with our work, and if you're interested in advocacy or policy or regulatory issues in Colorado and want to support them but don't know how, you can go to our website, signaltechcoalition.org, or reach out to me, Quinn at signaltechcoalition.org, and we'd love to plug you in. What that means is our goal is on making high impact advocacy as easy as possible. So we're only going to reach out if we have an ask that's actually worth your time, and we'll do all the legwork to make that happen. But if you want to be on our newsletter, find out more about what's going on, engage in a way that actually uses your specific voice to show that there is economic opportunity with transitioning our economy towards a clean energy economy, then yeah, we'd love to work with you.
Great, thanks. Jordan, how can entrepreneurs get more involved with Nrel?
So there's a few different ways to get more involved with Nrel. So Nrel has a long history of working with new startup companies, traditionally in the renewable energy context, but we have expanded that out. We work in all throughout the clean energy sector, as well as with clean water technologies too, with water treatment technologies. So we have a variety of ways in which we do partnerships, whether it's hosting lab space. We also have a network of over, I think, 300 different facilities located across the country that have other resources or facilities that we partner with, and we help facilitate those connections. One of the major areas right now in which we're doing investments is through an organization called the National Alliance for Water Innovation, or NAWI. This research hub is a $110 million entity funded by the Department of Energy that is designed for advancing technologies that could revolutionize water treatment and water reuse, especially in distributed contexts. And so that is an area where we have funding opportunities, where we make funding available for entrepreneurs, for tech companies, for academics, for anyone who's got a technology idea that we think we can sort of disrupt how we manage our water sector. That is, an area where we do have active funding opportunities where we could, partner and or, send some funds your way to do some great research and some scaling up of technologies.
That's great. So, Julie, I'm going to start with you on this next question. What does Cleantech mean to you? Not as much of a definition, but, as on a more kind of 30,000 foot view, when you look at Cleantech, kind of what are you seeing right now and what does that mean to you?
Well, I guess at a super high level, it means that we're reducing our carbon footprint with it. So it involves less energy, more renewable energy, finding ways to reduce water, realizing that water is energy. So to get our drinking water, say, to our tap takes a lot more than just the water. It has to be cleaned and it has to be pressured. There's a lot of energy that goes into that. And then the wastewater treatment at the other end involves a lot of energy. So anything in those treatment processes that can reduce energy is clean tech to me. Anything when it comes strictly to water, anything that will keep us from having to add yet another reservoir and pull yet more water out of our surface water, because we really don't have any more, we've run out basically. Lowering water tables, the rivers running dry by the time they reach the ocean or long before that is it's not good for humanity, but it's also not good for the wildlife that depends on that water. We've lost about 50% of our wildlife in just the last few decades, partly because of that. Another thing that clean tech is toxins, the toxins that we use in our products, the toxins that we apply to our, say, our gardens and lawns, if we choose to do so or not, and to grow our food is playing huge in taking out our wildlife, and we need to stop that. So anything that we can do to avoid those kinds of products, any substitutes, anything like that is clean tech to me. And then obviously solar, definitely really excited about that as an alternative. And I know that a lot of wastewater treatment plants are doing more to recover the massive amounts of energy that enter them. So when you have a waste stream going to a wastewater treatment plant, that is full of potential biogas, for instance, which can be recovered and reused. And it's exactly the same as the methane gas that we're pulling out as fossil fuels. So we just have to figure out how to reuse that sustainably. There's a lot of potential there.
Great. Thanks, Julie. I have a question here from Alex, and it says, hi all, would you consider food production techniques that use dramatically less natural resources? Oh, I guess Julie answered it already.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, the more that we can go, we need to go 100% organic. We need to get there. Anything that we can do. Yes.
Great. Quinn, what does Cleantech mean to you in a kind of larger sense?
Yeah. I mean, at a high level, to me, it means market opportunities. We are practically in the midst of the largest economic and infrastructural transition in history. And, climate action, being bold on climate action is no longer just the right thing to do. It's the smart thing to do. It's the most economically risk-averse thing to do. And I think it's exciting because people can make a big impact and have really significant returns expectations in what they're doing. And I think we're seeing how significantly the market is shifting now and how significantly it's going to be shifting over the next 30, 40 years. And so as entrepreneurs have a really unique ability to see opportunities and capitalize on them in really, really profound ways. And so, I'm excited that we get to sit at the nexus of impact and innovation.
Awesome. Jordan, what about you? What's Cleantech mean to you in a high level?
So I think I love what we've heard so far, but I think, for me, when I think about it, I tend to take a step back and I think, what are these basic human necessities that we have? Things like we all need shelter, we all need food, we all need water, we all need energy. And I think, in the past, traditionally, we've been able to, provide all these needs and these services for humanity, but it's been done in ways using technologies that has led to some environmental degradation. And so I really see Cleantech as finding a way in which we can still provide those basic necessities, but potentially in a better and more cost-effective way that are, instead of degrading the environment, potentially benefiting the environment and benefiting other aspects of society too. And I think that's sort of how I view it. And I think it also leads to some more it can lead to some more complexities in some cases. And I think, the question from Alex, highlighted that too. When we think about food production, it does tie into energy, it does tie into emissions, it does tie into water. When we think about Cleantech, we're sort of entering that space where we can't just think about one of these basic services or needs in isolation. To do it right and to do it really effectively, we might need to actually think about what are the impacts across sectors that traditionally have not been considered.
Yeah. I have a question here too, that is, what advice does the panel have for younger technologists or folks starting their careers in tech that want to get involved in climate more? And whoever wants it can take it.
I'll jump in. And maybe just because my background wasn't in climate, it was more in startups and acceleration. And so I feel that very personally. For me, the advice I would give is that, or maybe it's just the biggest learning, is that there aren't enough people working in this space. And the fun journey for me has been asking a lot of questions to very kind, smart people who have been willing to give me time. And eventually all of those conversations have gotten to a place where someone has said, I don't know, or we don't know. And it's at every level of our state government, with a lot of people who, from the outside, I always thought that they did have the answers. If we just kept asking the right next question, we would get to a point where people said, I don't know, but could you help us with that? And so, if you want to get in, if you're looking to start up a company in the space, I think there's a lot of appetite, at least from the public sector leadership in Colorado, for more people to engage, because there are a lot of really felt needs in the climate space. And so I think more than anything, I would say thank you. I'm very excited to hear that that's what you're interested in, and we need all hands on deck.
Great, thank you. So, Jordan, what are you seeing currently in the market that you're most excited about? And this could kind of tie in like sectors of R&D, emerging technologies, kind of anywhere. What are you seeing kind of, maybe a year or two down the line that you're really excited about? And what can entrepreneurs do to engage with these new kind of exciting developments that you're seeing?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And I think, related to this field of, water treatment or, climate smart sort of water systems, I'm really seeing three different areas. So it's sort of three different segments. One might be large facilities. And these could be things like large municipal water treatment systems. You might think of a Denver water style type facility. That's one sort of market segment. A second one would be more mobile or distributed systems. And these might be things that are relevant for oil and gas, treatment of produced waters, agricultural runoff, treatment and reuse, smaller municipal systems, or even, commercial facilities that, buildings you might see downtown. And then the third area are like household residential level taps for water treatment or tracking water quality within the home. I sort of see three different distinct markets so far, each of which potentially have different technologies that would really speak to them, or different opportunities there. But I think across all three of those, I am seeing some sort of common themes or common threads. One is the need to reduce the cost of the treatment technologies in general. Just the cost right now is a barrier. If we can find ways to improve the manufacturing of those, or find ways to reduce that, make the manufacturing or the distribution more efficient, that's going to be huge. The second way is to make the systems operate better, and that's primarily through automation. There's a big need for, I think, linking advancements in whether it's IoT or whether it's other ways of taking large data sets, large quantities of information that we're sensing and we're collecting data on every second or every 10 minutes, from these facilities, translating all that data into something that's an actionable decision point for how you might want to, update your treatment processes. So that automation is going to be huge, and it's going to be something that applies to those three areas. And then the third thing I think is really finding ways to reduce the complexity of those and minimize risks. I think what we're seeing is, if you have to be importing, chemicals for water treatment, that's another, supply chain risk, or some other sort of health and safety risk too. Any way in which you can make each of these systems self-contained, so water in a box, or finding ways to electrify certain treatment processes so you don't need to ship in chemicals from elsewhere, has a great economic as well as ecological benefit. Those are the, I think, the things that we are that we're seeing that makes me excited. And I think, as I mentioned, that's sort of the manufacturing cost reductions, automation, and then minimizing chemical or outside inputs, I think really apply to those three different market segments where we see most of the activity happening and most of the opportunities in this tech space.
Great. Julie, what about you? What are you seeing anything in the market you're really excited about? And where can you see entrepreneurs engaging in that opportunity?
Well, one thing just at a high level is that they changed the naming of wastewater treatment plants just a few years ago to water resource recovery facilities. And that was to emphasize the value that I mentioned previously of the energy and resources that can be recovered from wastewater streams. And a huge one, a big gigantic one, is methane gas. Again, it's the same gas that we buy from Excel or that we get as fossil fuels. It's exactly the same gas, methane, and it's contaminated with sulfurs and other contaminants that the biomass produces when it naturally metabolizes the wastewater, let's say. And then the biomass itself, but the biomass itself is hugely useful as a fertilizer. It's just compost. And so Metro Denver, for instance, they process over 100 million gallons a day of wastewater, and they all of their sludge goes to biomass land application. And that is the best thing that we can do to go full circle to avoid the need for chemical fertilizers and toxins that then get over applied and run into the streams and rivers and cause pollution. So it's really a good way out. There are some challenges with that we just found out about that we definitely need help with technologically. There's a chemical class of chemicals called PFAS, PFAS, and those are polyfluoroalkyl substances. Sorry, that's a mouthful, but it is what it is. But they are chemicals that every household has them. They are on like that, like Teflon is one example. Several kinds of fabrics, synthetic fabrics, and then they're huge in firefighting materials and anything that's intended to coat a material from grease. So things like pizza boxes, it's pretty scary. And they're called forever chemicals because they don't break down, and they're going, they're getting flushed down the drain. They're ending up in the wastewater plants, and they're contaminating the biosolids that we need. So anything that we can do to substitute PFAS for chemicals that will break down, they're starting to look for that. But you can actually get on the EPA and find this list of thousands of chemicals. And they're known to be just in our bodies, and they're not good. They're just another thing that's not good for us, and they're not good for us and not good for the wildlife. So that's a huge opportunity. But as far as from the water standpoint, because just water distributes everything. It collects it and distributes it, and that's how it gets out into the environment. It's through the water, into the groundwater, into wells around heavy application sites, say near places where firefighting chemicals have been used, near airports, things like that. It's contaminated a lot. So there's a huge opportunity there. And then another one, like I said, was for biogas recovery. Even though it's one of the best things that we can do to pull resources out of a wastewater treatment plant, it's also expensive. So we need to bring those costs down, to Jordan's point, and figure out how to do that so that it's economically feasible. We're getting better. And then there are wastewater treatment plants now that are powering. City of Rifle is one example. City of Greeley is another example, that are powering their wastewater treatments, at least in part, the plants, with solar panels. And we definitely need more of that. So, and I'm really very, very excited about solar. I seems like every couple of years or so, I evaluated a solar project at Coors, and they were so out of whack that the ROI was just upside down at first, and they just got better and better and better, and finally got to the point where it was actually economically feasible. And I'm really excited about the technology. It's just a bunch of good, smart people working on it and making it better. And the less expensive we can make it, the more people will use it.
Hey Morgan, this is Devon. I just wanted to hop in to build on what Julie just said. I have one more thing to add to the list for a market opportunity. Based on the work that we've done and the work that we're currently doing, there is a market opportunity for trash removal devices. There are cities all over the world are struggling with how to get trash out of the waterway and how to keep it out of the waterway. So if you can come up with something like a product or a service to address that, I guarantee there is a market opportunity literally all over the world for that. So just something to keep in mind.
Well, and I think, one of the things that Coors did to go to a zero waste landfill, go zero waste to landfill, the definition is to collect and recycle everything you possibly can. and minimize things that are not recyclable, just try to keep them out of the plant. But anything that's not recyclable, we have to collect that in a truck and take it to the nearest incinerator. And so it doesn't go to landfill, but it gets incinerated. And I think the nearest one, I think there was one in Utah, one in Oklahoma, and another one someplace. Anyway, we ended up hucking it all the way to Oklahoma. And I think every city or every large city should have some kind of a green incinerator, not something that spews poisons into the air as they incinerate, but it's really called, responsible incinerators are called waste to energy incinerators. So you actually capture the energy from the incineration process, because a lot of that stuff has, when you burn plastic, it actually, you can start it on fire and it'll burn by itself. That's because it has energy in it. And if you can collect that energy, then you can get something out of it as you're getting rid of it and keeping it out of landfill. And I'd love to see every city have one of those. Another one is now I'm building on Devon, because it just reminds me that Coors has the only glass plant in the state and happens to be located about 4 miles north of 58 and McIntyre. And we have glass collection bins all over the property and out, I think, out into Wheat Ridge or whatever, to collect glass. So you put glass into a single stream, and we all know that it may or may not get recycled. It might end up just being used as road fill someplace. But if it gets collected in the Coors bins, it will get taken to the glass plant a few miles away, and it'll be back as a glass in a couple weeks. And it actually, when you use glass, it's called cullet, ground up used glass. It's called cullet. And it actually reduces the melting temperature of the raw materials of the glass stream. So glass is made with sodium carbonate and silica sand. And those have really high melting points, like say thinking like, 3,000 Fahrenheit kind of melting points. And when you add cullet to that as a seed, you reduce that melting point down into like the low 2000s. It's a lot. And they use natural gas to heat those, to heat their kilns. So that's or furnaces, sorry, they're not kilns or furnaces, but still that's a huge energy savings, and it keeps the glass completely full circle economy. And I think every state at least ought to have something like that. And really the big cities should all have an opportunity like that. And then that gets us to focusing on glass and staying completely away from plastic.
Great.
So,
thanks, Julie. Mm-hmm. Quinn, what are you most excited to see in the market or coming to market soon, and where are the big opportunities for engagement for entrepreneurs or new companies?
Yeah, I would actually love to answer this slightly differently. I would love to talk about the needs that we're seeing. So we have been working a lot with the Energy Office on kind of what needs to happen in the state over the next 20, 30 years. Specifically, earlier this year, the Governor's Office, the Energy Office, released the climate action roadmap for how we're going to hit the state's climate goals through 2050. And we have been talking with them about, what are the things that keep us up at night for, obstacles within that for we don't have the technology we need. It's not at scale. We need to scale up a lot over that time horizon. And so this is kind of what's on that list of where there are the biggest needs for our state. It's industrial manufacturing decarbonization, electrification of heavy duty fleets, figuring out how to deploy more heat pumps in buildings, the development and deployment of hydrogen and green hydrogen, and carbon capture and sequestration. The other thing is that I think there's going to be a lot of economic opportunities and needs within transmission as well. But those are the areas that we're talking about, ways we can bring more public funding to the table. How can we incentivize more private sector capital towards these specific areas? Because those are kind of some of the biggest hurdles for our state for hitting its climate goals.
Great. Okay, Quinn, I'm going to keep going with you right now. When someone approaches you with a clean tech climate startup idea and early stage innovation, what are probably 3 of the first questions you're going to ask them, and then to help them get connected or stay on track?
That's a great question. The first thing that comes to mind immediately is, what is the policy and regulatory landscape? I think in a lot of industries and sectors that is very important, but specifically within clean tech, if people are working in energy or infrastructure, there are such very specific rules around, what needs to happen. And also, not only, in buildings, we're talking not only about regulation that is mandating, how clean buildings have to be now, but we also know that the regulation is going to change over the next 30 years, and it's going to increasingly get more aggressive. And so not only what is the regulatory landscape now, what's it going to be in 30 years? And, how can you make sure that you're positioning yourself for long-term success? That is certainly the first thing that comes to mind. I think the other thing that I spend a lot of time thinking about is public and private collaboration, because I think there's so much opportunity and need within that. And so I would also ask them how they can leverage public sector goals and, financing and needs to kind of make sure that they're in a position to scale really rapidly. And perhaps the third question would be around the financing landscape. Carbon capture and sequestration is I think a strong example, because that is something that's talked about quite frequently. And there are a lot of potential needs within carbon capture, but the funding cycles it's really hard to get funding, because the time to get returns is very long, and it's a new nascent industry. And so there's a lot of perceived risk. And so I think I would ask about what does the current financing landscape look like, and what are ways that you could reduce perceived risk in what you're trying to tackle?
Great. Jordan, I got a question for you in the chat here. If someone has a project that needs to be developed in water storage, reconciliation, mitigation, who's the best person to contact to get started over in Nrel, or where would they start with you guys?
That is a great question. That's sort of a big question too. It might all depend on what type of water storage you need, what that water storage is going to be used for, where it's going to be located, what's the application. I think you could send more details to me. I could help figure out where it best might go. But it all depends on, again, how large it might be, what the purpose is going to be for. What else you want to do with that sort of water storage. If there's other benefits that you might be able to get from that water storage. We're seeing water storage as a sort of an opportunity that can also be used as a form of energy storage too, or some other things too. So I think there's a lot of different potential outcomes depending on what the specific water storage need is. I will say, developing a new reservoir is not an easy task. So I think that's the first time. So it all, but I'd be happy to chat more if we had more details.
Yep. They said they're going to start small and then scale up. Something you haven't touched on is the innovation innovation. Is that what you were talking about earlier is that specifically with water, the $110 fund, or is there also, Nrel has their innovation lab as well? Are those one and the same, or different avenues for people to take?
Yeah, those are two different activities. So the Nowi Hub activity that I mentioned earlier is Department of Energy funded, $110 million. That is really designed for water treatment and reuse, desalination, things like that are in that front that are innovative technologies that we're looking to work on. I will say, and I'm glad Julie mentioned this earlier, that PFAS is certainly a major area of interest that should be on everyone's radar. There's an immediate need right now for not only dealing with capturing some of these types of chemicals in that PFAS category, but then also finding ways to dispose of them or destroy them, and which could involve a few different types of technologies or some unique novel technology that could do both. But that work, I do think is distinct from, I think, Morgan, what you're referring to, which is our Wells Fargo incubator program. And so we've partnered with Wells Fargo. Nrel, the National Renewable Energy Lab, has partnered with Wells Fargo in a very, I think, successful innovation incubator that does allow us to, work with individual startup companies, sort of focus their technology, walk them through the steps that you need to take in order to ramp up, scale up their technology, get a much greater distribution of that technology. It's a really neat ecosystem that involves sort of scientists working with, entrepreneurs, working with investors and finance folks, other people that know how to commercialize technologies. And so through this IN2 project or activity, we've worked on a couple of different fields, including clean water technology, as well as innovative agricultural techniques. So I think Alex brought up agriculture. There's a lot of different areas in which we've done this, and it's a really great way to sort of leverage not just great researchers, but also people in the investment, finance, commercialization space as well. I can put in a link to that Wells Fargo Innovation Incubator as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Jordan. Julie, when someone approaches you with a clean tech or climate startup idea, what are the first couple questions you ask them to make sure they're on the right track or to help them get connected?
Well, I'm always, and I have been approached tons of times when I was an engineer at Coors about different projects and technologies and things like that. And I always want to know how much energy it's going to save, how much water it's going to save, what's it's going to cost. I mean, that's what it boils down to. How difficult it is to implement. And then, of course, other things that are more detailed, if we can get that far, is how it's going to fit into the system and things like that. Training of people who have to use it is a big deal. So it can't be very complicated. It can't be hard to maintain, or it can't be any harder to maintain than what we already have. Those kinds of things. Yeah.
Great. So, Quinn, we'll go back to you. How can people with a clean tech or water project vet their early concept or idea stage with a stakeholder or user groups? What's the best way? Have you seen anything work particularly well? Little insights on, I have a great idea. How do I get connected to my stakeholders?
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question and such a big one, just because there are so many different types of stakeholders for different specific industries. But I think within the clean tech sector, there are a lot of great parties to connect with. If you're interested in getting involved in solar or storage, there's the Colorado Solar and Storage Association, which does a lot of great work, and they can answer a lot of very specific questions. If you want to vet with, honestly, I would actually probably say the energy office is a great place to start for most of the businesses in the clean tech space. If it touches on decarbonization in some capacity, I think that they're an excellent choice. OEdit does a great job of demystifying some of what's happening in different sectors and providing resources around, okay, well, what are the incentives at a state level for starting up a company in a sector where it's really needed? Or if you think that it's clean tech and it's going to do a lot of job creation, specifically in rural areas, definitely talk to OEdit. Yeah, I mean, gosh, there are so many great places to look and so many good people to talk with. If someone is on this panel or someone is on this call and has an idea that they want to vet, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk with you about your specific idea and connect you to people in our network who could provide much more expertise than I could. But yeah, it's a great question and a big one.
Julie, how about you? How can people with an early stage water project vet their concept with their stakeholder groups?
Well, basically what Quinn is talking about is just talking to people and vetting it out, talking to a variety of people who are in the industry or know about the industry, doing some research, I guess, to find out who the industry groups are. And then going possibly to conferences or meetings or things like that, where you can get a chance to see what's going on in that industry and get a really good feel by talking to people of how your idea is going to fit. Because that's the conferences are the biggest places where a variety of people, you'll have engineers, vendors, operators, all together that actually run these processes all together in the same place. So even like RMWA, for instance, we partner with RMS AWWA. So RMWA is the wastewater side of the industry, and AWWA is the drinking water side. So then we're one water when we're together, I guess, is one way to look at it. It's all the water people all in the same place. And every year we have an annual conference to where we pull together about 1,000 people in a normal year. Hopefully 2022 will be able to do that. And even if you're not a member of either association, you can pay a couple $100 extra and still go to the conference. And then you can talk to a lot of different people who are right there in your field. And actually, also, we usually have a significant amount of state legislators and then, CDPHE people at those conferences as well. So.
Devon, I feel like you might have some good resources for people too.
I just thank you, Morgan. I was just about to jump in. Yeah, I just wanted to say, so we have in the past been able to connect a startup or two with some resources that we have in municipalities. For example, we facilitated a pilot of a stormwater filtration device with both Denver and Colorado Springs. It's not even a pilot anymore. They actually are engaging in purchasing the units for real and installing them, along with a number of other communities in Colorado, Thornton, Parker, and some others, Vail. But if we can, if it's a water related kind of a product or service or has a water implication or savings or impact, a positive one, please reach out and we'll see if it's a fit. If there's something we can do to help facilitate that connection to make the business successful, we're happy to do that. We're not sales representatives, but it's in our mission to make sure for clean water. Whatever we can do to facilitate some of these solutions to water quality challenges or water quantity challenges, conserving water certainly. We're happy to do that. So I think I put contact information in the chat earlier today, but feel free to shoot a message if there's something we can do to help. And honestly, I would love to hear from you after the panel about what is missing, like where are the gaps in those connections? And I would, for anybody who's willing to just have a conversation with us, what can we do to help fill those gaps? Would it be helpful for us to help hold focus groups? Would it be helpful for us to hold workshops of some kind where we can try to connect the end users with the businesses? So I would love to have your ideas on that. Thank you.
Yeah. Jordan, how about you? Where's the best place for people with clean tech or water project to vet their early concept?
It's a really challenging question, I think, in some ways, because one of the things you might want to do if you've got a new, water treatment technology is test it out at scale. You need to find a place where you can do that. And I think, one of the reasons why the water space has traditionally been challenging for a lot of innovation and new tech is because inherently those water utilities, need to be very, very conservative in adopting new technologies because public health is a primary concern. And so I think that's great, for our health and for our, our livelihood. But it does make, the whole challenge of how do I, get a pilot plant set up and who's going to be drinking or who's going to be using that water. I think it makes it more of a challenge. And so I think one successful strategy is to, talk directly to some of these utilities and they might have labs or they might have test sites that they can do things on a smaller scale or things that aren't necessarily going online, but that could really help. Otherwise, some of these other research networks that we talked about are a good starting point because they have access to other research facilities too. And so these might be converted industrial old facilities or warehouses or manufacturing facilities that have been shut down, but have now been repurposed or transformed into something that supports at scale or at least larger scale testing of some of these water treatment technologies. And so there are a few different resources throughout the country that we have. And so there is, through, I think, the Bureau of Reclamation, they might manage some of these, as well as the Water Resource Federation is another great source for that information, where they have basically the location of different types of facilities that can be used for testing out. So if you've got a new technology, they'll consider adopting it there. And I can send around some of those resources as well too, for where you might see some of these facilities.
That's perfect. We have 5 minutes left, and I want to leave a little bit of time for any open-ended questions for the panel. If anyone has any, put them right here in the chat or in the Q&A, just whatever you might want to ask anyone on the panel. This is totally open to our audience now. And if not, I'll just keep peppering you guys with other questions. So while people are thinking, I'm gonna just pose a random question that popped in my head. If there was one thing that you think could be funded more heavily and really make the largest impact, what would that be? And I'll start with Jordan.
One thing is it's a tough question. Tough to nail down. I think I might, I think you could look at this like long-term versus, short-term and most immediate needs. I would say, long-term, there's going to be a need for us to be able to better treat wastewaters and reuse them, as well as treat brackish groundwater like we might have in Colorado, or, otherwise desalination type activities that we're going to need to meet up with a growing, water demands and declining water resources. In the near term, I think the PFAS water treatment issue is going to be where there's going to be the most immediate need for technology advancements and people to deploy technologies that work.
Great. Rapid fire to Quinn now. I like how Jordan answered. Long term, what's one thing you wish you could see invested and really taken care of? And short term, what is one thing you would like to see?
Yeah, short term, I feel like my answer is, a wish for more wishes, but Coalition for Green Capital is a national organization that functions as a green bank, and they have a lot of state level subsidiaries. Colorado has one. If you're not familiar with that term, it's more of a revolving loan fund than a depository bank, but there is a funding bill federally right now for them to receive real money that would actually be able to help them do big work. And so I would love to see that passed. I would love to see them receive significant funding, because then they can do really interesting things like securitize coal plants, so that we can shut down coal plants sooner in a way that we can actually also take care of the workers while that's being done, and be able to provide innovative financial products and packages that address real financing gaps. Because if institutional finance thinks that the threshold isn't being met, or there's too much risk and they won't invest, or the size of the project is not big enough, there are a lot of very felt needs. And so the green bank model is one that can provide really useful, innovative capital in a lot of cool ways. So that would be certainly a near-term one. Long-term, we're actually putting out a policy memo shortly around different policy or regulatory recommendations that our coalition has been putting together, specifically around how we can finance Colorado's decarbonization. So I feel like I can't choose just one, but we will be releasing the document soon.
Great. Julie, with our last minute and a half, what's your short-term wish list and what's your long-term wish?
Well, yeah, I have a lot of them, but if I stick with water, I think that we go a long way with building on the water reuse. We're getting a lot better about dealing with potable and non-potable water reuse. Sending fully treated drinking water out to water golf courses is absolutely insane, and we're starting to move away from that. Now, building upon that, I think that we need to move now closer to home and get into more water reuse full circle. We have a lot of lightly used water in the house, mostly from showers and hand washing and things like that. Even laundry water is very lightly used that needs to be converted, and that can happen right within the house. We have a little legislation in the state. We've got Reg 86 that governs that, and it's not getting leveraged very well. And part of it is because it doesn't have very good, in my opinion, processes or alternatives for homeowners to work with. So we have a long way to go, and there is so much room for innovation in that. I mean, that's a simple treatment process that involves a little filter, a surge tank, and a little disinfection. And we need to get there, because that would save us a bunch of water, a bunch of pushing water through pipes, energy, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Great. Well, we are up at time. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Devon, thank you for all your help and all Tap In does. I highly recommend everyone go check out Tap In, the Water Connection. They're great connectors in our community that are definitely underutilized. So I would, pepper her with tons of emails. And for all our other panelists, Quinn, Julie, Jordan, thank you guys so much for being here. Really appreciate it. And hope everyone has a great weekend. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.